It is the Easter Monday public holiday right around the country and another crucial day to stop the spread of the virus. They were certainly taking things seriously on the rescue flight from Uruguay that landed in Melbourne with cruise ship passengers on board. Now, just look at this. Flight attendants in protective suits for the safety demonstration. There was 80 people thought to have had COVID-19. The whole front of the plane was completely cordoned off with plastic and the travellers are all now in quarantine.
More Mercy flights are bringing hundreds of stranded Australians home from Cambodia and India this morning. Meantime, 750 Qantas staff at Adelaide Airport have been ordered into isolation amid ongoing concerns about a cluster. Police have issued more than $1 million in fines for social distancing breaches, including, would you believe, a man who drove 70 kilometres for a date. The COVID rules could be here for the long haul, with warnings our international borders could be closed for the remainder of the year. And Boris Johnson has been released from hospital and is now recovering at the British Prime Minister's country estate.
Around Australia, there are 6,325 confirmed cases. The death toll has risen by 2 this morning, bringing it to 61. At least 3,300 people are listed as recovered. 185 countries have cases of COVID-19. Over 1.8 million people have been infected. The death toll is more than 110,000, but more than 412,000 have now recovered after treatment and isolation. If the fear of contracting or spreading coronavirus isn't a big enough incentive to follow the rules, well, there are also big fines. Around the country, you must stay home and self-isolate if you've been diagnosed with COVID-19, are suspected of having it, or had close contact with a confirmed case. People returning from overseas by aircraft or cruise ship must quarantine for 14 days. In New South Wales, it's a $1,000 on-the-spot fine for not complying with self-isolation or quarantine orders. Not following these rules is also a criminal offence. For individuals, the maximum penalty by a court is $11,000 or imprisonment for 6 months or both, with a further $5,500 for each day the offence continues. Corporations face a maximum $55,000 fine plus $27,500 for each following day. New South Wales Police can hand out fines of $1,000 for individuals and $5,000 for businesses that breach social distancing laws. This includes the restrictions on weddings to 5 people, funerals to 10. Fines are being issued to people gathering in groups in public. You can even be fined at home for having lots of visitors. Victoria has the most expensive on-the-spot fines for not complying with social distancing and gatherings in groups larger than 2 people. More than $1,600 for individuals and nearly $10,000 for businesses. 5 mates each copped the $1,600 fine last week for playing backyard cricket. Larger fines by the court and criminal charges are also possible. And in Queensland, it's a $1,334 fine for a person breaking public health directions and more than $6,500 for corporations. The maximum penalties through the courts are up to 10 times higher. In WA, fines are $1,000 for individuals who breach coronavirus restrictions. South Australia also has a $1,000 fine. However, they're only issued for gatherings of 10 people or more.
We're live now to our team of reporters for the very latest developments this morning. First, to Sunrise reporter David Boywood, who's in Melbourne. David, good morning. Australians who've been travelling in India, well, they've arrived home overnight.
That's right, Matt. This charter flight touched down overnight. There were around 400 Aussies on board. They were greeted on the tarmac by authorities who briefed them, took their temperature and then brought them here to the Travel Lodge in Southbank, where they have now begun that 14-day quarantine period inside those hotel rooms under guard. Now, it does follow on from the arrival of those passengers who had been on board the coronavirus-stricken Greg Mortimer Antarctic cruise ship. Now, this had been a very long journey back home for these passengers. They flew in yesterday via South America. We understand that around 80% of those passengers had actually tested positive to COVID-19. Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews, though, very keen to avoid any comparisons with the doomed Ruby Princess cruise ship.
There is no comparison.
Why is that?
Well, because These people were tested, these people were known to be positive, these people went straight from the airport to a hotel. None of these people have been let into the community.
So that 14-day quarantine period for all of those passengers now well underway.
7 News reporter Samantha Brett is at Sydney International Airport. Sam, there's been big relief for Australians who've been stranded in Cambodia.
Matt, huge relief this morning for the 184 Australians who touched down this morning at Sydney International Airport from Cambodia. Many of them that I've spoken to this morning, they say that they've been trying for several weeks to desperately get onto a flight, but either those flights were cancelled or tickets were costing upwards from $7,000. So they were certainly very thankful when the embassy stepped in and was able to charter the flight that has arrived about half an hour ago. Let's take a listen to what some of the passengers had to say.
Very few spare seats, so we were all, virtually every seat was virtually taken. There was a few empty, vacant seats, but majority of them were taken.
Yeah, despite people sitting very closely together on that flight, many of the passengers do say that they were impressed with the protocols. All of them had their temperature taken, and they do say that no one was sick on that flight. So they've all been put into buses, awaiting buses, and they will be taken to hotels right around Sydney for that 2-week quarantine period. Many of them I've spoken to this morning say they don't mind about being in that hotel for 2 weeks. They're just happy to be home.
Home is just that little bit closer. Thank you very much. Well, Sunrise correspondent Amanda Backman is at Adelaide Airport. Amanda, a coronavirus cluster there is starting to cause some big problems.
It certainly is. 750 Qantas employees who work here at Adelaide Airport have been told that from now they must go into quarantine. Now, that is because of a cluster here at Adelaide Airport involving baggage handlers. At this stage, there are 34 people in that cluster. 18 of them are baggage handlers and 16 of them are associated cases. But the people who've been asked to quarantine include cabin crew, customer service people, pilots, engineers and also baggage handlers. Now, Qantas says that the people have not been in contact with members of the public. However, anybody who has travelled through Adelaide Airport, including the car park, over the last 14 days, is being told that should they develop any symptoms of coronavirus, they should immediately get tested and go into isolation.
It's good advice. Now to Sunrise correspondent Bianca Stone at police headquarters in Brisbane. Bianca, no shortage of fines being handed out.
Matt, good morning. We've had an update from Police HQ here in Brisbane. In Queensland alone, more than $1 million in fines have now been handed out. 754 individual infringement notices, the majority of those handed out over the Easter long weekend. That includes a Cairns man who decided to drive 70 k's to Port Douglas for a date. He'd met his love interest on Plenty of Fish, but it turns out he was the one that was caught. A wealthy businessman was also caught not once but twice after flying a helicopter over to Moreton Island for a picnic. 3 people also busted doing burnouts, unlike that guy, up in Harvey Bay, and also people were busted going to the dump.
When you consider over a long weekend like Easter, in a state the size of Queensland with nearly 5 million people, overall the community has been fantastic. They have been compliant, but there are those that the message doesn't get through to. And we've had to issue 496 infringement notices to date over the long weekend.
Because these rules are so new, there will be a review process. Police will be looking at all of these fines. Any of them issued unfairly can be withdrawn, Matt.
$1 million in fines. That is incredible. All right, now to political reporter Olivia Leeming in Canberra. Olivia, universities will get a really big boost with a government relief package.
Yeah, also slashing the cost of many online university courses in those crucial skills areas like teaching, nursing, IT and science, adding an extra 20,000 places targeted at many Australians now out of work. Here's the Education Minister.
These are a world first in these short-term diploma certificates. We're expanding also graduate certificates, and we're encouraging as many people as possibly can to think about, OK, how can I re-skill or how can I change direction when it comes to my career?
The government also committing $18 billion to the sector. It's one of the hardest hit as a result of coronavirus, which has seen the number of international student enrolments plummet. But the university sector says while it is welcome, it will not be enough to save an estimated 21,000 jobs predicted to go across the country over the next 6 months.
More help may well be needed. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, team. We'll check in again soon. Here's Mon.
Well, Boris Johnson is recovering at his country residence after leaving hospital in London. The British Prime Minister has spent more than 2 weeks battling coronavirus, 3 nights of which were in intensive care. The 55-year-old is praising health workers, saying that they saved his life.
That is why we will defeat this coronavirus and defeat it together. We will win because our NHS is the beating heart of this country. It is the best of this country. It is unconquerable. It is powered by love.
It's a powerful message. Europe Bureau Chief Hugh Whitfeld is in London for us. Good morning, Hugh. Now, it was a close call for the PM.
Well, it's pretty clear now that Boris Johnson had a near-death experience during his 3 nights in the ICU at St Thomas's Hospital, and that his life was genuinely in the balance. Boris Johnson has now been discharged from St Thomas's and has been driven up to Chequers, which is the British Prime Minister's country residence. It's about 65 kilometres out of London in Buckinghamshire, and he is up there with his pregnant fiancée, Carrie Simmons, who herself has been battling coronavirus symptoms. Downing Street says that the Prime Minister will not be returning to work immediately, and the expectation is that he will take a couple of weeks to recover. But he did release this quite emotional video message, posting it online, heaping praise on the doctors and nurses who did help to save his life, singling out 2 in particular, Jenny from New Zealand and Lewis from Portugal.
The reason in the end my body did start to get enough oxygen was because for every second of the night, they were watching and they were thinking and they were caring and making the interventions I needed.
Boris Johnson, of course, is one of the lucky ones. So many are not so lucky here in Britain. The death toll has now surpassed 10,000 across the UK. Doctors are warning that Britain could very well become the worst affected country in Europe, and there is a lot of pressure on Boris Johnson's government. They may not have gotten everything right here, and it may have costed lives. There are questions about the lack of equipment for nurses and doctors. The borders remain open here, and questions about whether or not the British government acted quick enough. Nonetheless, Boris Johnson in that video message said, quote, we will defeat this coronavirus and defeat it together. Mon?
Thank you, Hugh. Here's Matt.
Well, British actor and comedian Tim Brooke-Taylor has died after contracting coronavirus. The entertainer, best known for the popular series The Goodies, died aged 79. His co-stars have paid tribute to him online, remembering the comedian as a delight to work with and a true visual comic. If you watch it now, it is just as good.
It is, and it's great, and kids will love it too, because my kids were watching it last week. He has that gorgeous baby face, and he is so sad, so very sad.
Yeah, he'll be missed. All right. The coronavirus is causing controversy in this footy world as well. Here's Barrett's with all the details.
Yeah, Matt, it sure is. There's been more criticism over the NRL's push for a May 28th restart. Our 7 News sport reporter Michelle Bishop is at NRL headquarters in Sydney for us this morning. Michelle, the New South Wales Deputy Premier is backing the return of the NRL, but there are still some pretty big hurdles to get through.
Good morning, Barrett. So one of those is, of course, the New South Wales government getting on the same page. The mixed messages have been unbelievable. Of course, New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian and New South Wales Health Minister Brad Hazzard have been extremely critical of the NRL, saying that basically they're a law unto themselves. But unfortunately, they've also had support and advice from other government departments. New South Wales Police Commissioner Mick Fuller and, of course, as you just mentioned there, her own deputy, John Barilaro, today giving it the full support, saying footy is just part of our life. But the problem the NRL will face is, of course, it's a national game, and the Queensland and Victorian government, they say they won't be bending the rules in terms of any players flying and interstate. So that's one problem. And then, of course, is the New Zealand Warriors. That's a whole new ball game.
And Mish, just quickly, how are the players feeling about a May 28th restart?
Oh, Brett, they are so excited. They're going insane. They're going out of their mind trying to find creative ways to keep fit, but they are doing that. They are also really excited about the prospect of getting back, and they're close to people in clubland and being able to give them their jobs back at the same time.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, Michelle, thanks very much for that.